Today, we are going to be talking about one of the best players in NBA history and arguably the greatest player of all time, Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt is one of the all-time greats who is greatly shadowed because of the other greats like Michael Jordan, Kareem, and LeBron James. But today, we are going to be talking about the most dominant and freakish player in NBA history, Wilt the Stilt. Going into the NBA, Wilt Chamberlain was one of the most freakish athletes in the world, standing at 7'1", 275 pounds. He was also one of the fastest players ever, running an insane 4.4 in the 40-yard dash, and beating Jim Brown, one of the greatest running backs in NFL history, in a race. It was also said Wilt could lift an unbelievable 600 pounds and had a crazy 46-inch vertical. Wilt was a player who fashioned a finger roll and dominated a game like no other player in history. He could change a whole game with just one swat of the ball or an easy one-legged fadeaway. As we know, Wilt set the record for most points in a game with 100. In a season where he also averaged a preposterous 50.4 points a game, scoring more than 45 times in 1 year. Wilt was such a dominant scorer, the NBA had to change the rules, like widening the lane from 6 feet to 12 to make it more difficult for players like Wilt to post up. NBA also had to initiate offensive goaltending because of how high Wilt could jump for the ball. Jerry West once said, "There is no doubt that Wilt was one of the greatest players ever to play the game of basketball. He was the only player the rules of the game were changed for. His dominance of the sport was overwhelming." He held over 91 records in the NBA. That still stands. So had the record for most rebounds in a career with 20.9 points. He also has the most free throws made in a game with 28, despite not being a very great free throw shooter. He also averaged a mind-blowing 37.6 points per game as a rookie, another record by Wilt. Wilt went up against Walter Bellamy, who was having one of the best rookie seasons ever, averaging over 31 points a game. Wilt played him, and before the game, he said to him, "Hi Walter, you won't get a shot off." Wilt went on to block him 9 times in the first half. Blocks weren't recorded during his time, but many believe if they were, Wilt would have the most blocks in NBA history. It was said that Wilt was the only player who was able to block Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's unguardable hook shot. After leading the league in scoring in 7 straight seasons, in which he averaged 40 points per game, Wilt decided he would pass more, leading the league in assists, the only center in NBA history to do that. After the season, people would go on to say that Wilt couldn't score anymore. He then went on to score 62, 55, and 48 in his next 3 games in response to these claims. Wilt in his era played against some of the all-time greats in NBA history, like Oscar Robertson, Jerry West, Sam Jones, Rick Barry, and most notably, the great Bill Russell. Wilt met Russell 49 times in the playoffs, with Russell beating him 29 out of the 49 games. They also met 8 times in the playoffs between 1960 and 1969, with 4 of those series going to a deciding Game 7. Russell won all 4 series, but the point differential was only a 9 points in all Game 7s combined. A couple bounces the other way, and the rings narrative could have been different, giving Wilt more finals than Michael Jordan or Kareem. These losses shouldn't be blamed on Wilt, as he had to play a Celtics team with one of the greatest coaches in NBA history and a team with 8 future Hall of Famers led by Bill Russell. In these matchups, Wilt also played better than Russell, averaging 25.7 points per game, 28 rebounds, compared to Russell's 15 points per game and 24.7 rebounds per game. Wilt might not have as many rings as the other greats, winning 2 championships, but with 2 different teams in Philly and LA. This can be used against Wilt because his teammates weren't as great as Russell's or Michael Jordan's. Comparing Wilt to MJ, Wilt was the more stronger and versatile player and easily a better scorer. MJ had a phenomenal 31 50-point games in his entire career. but Wilt once scored 45 times in one season. And in rebounds, it isn't even comparable, giving Wilt the edge in that category too. He was once told that at 43 years old, Wilt once had a pickup game with Magic Johnson at a gym. Magic called a non-foul on Wilt, getting him upset. Wilt then told Magic he wasn't going to make a shot after this. Wilt went on and blocked all of Magic's shots. Another crazy story says Wilt Chamberlain was rumored to have challenged Muhammad Ali to a fight, but Ali's boxing manager backed out because of the intimidation of Chamberlain, fearing an upset. This story is just mind-blowing. Here's what Wilt had to say about Michael Jordan.
He asked Michael Jordan a few months ago. He said, Michael, now don't be, shy and don't be this and don't be that. Are you the best basketball player to ever play? And Michael said, yes, I am.
Michael Jordan and you, for a while, went back and forth.
Yeah, he's at a different level of celebrity, isn't he? Only because of the different kinds of media exposure that he's been given. If the two of you were in a room together, where do you think your conversation would focus, the two of you?
Well, first,
We're at the NBA's all-time team celebration, Cleveland, 1997. And over in the corner is Wilt and Michael Jordan. And they're sitting at a table arguing vociferously as to who the greatest player of all time was. And they're back and forth. And it's just intense as can be.
Hey, does it steam you that Michael Jordan gets paid so much and you were 10 times the player he is and you never got that kind of big money?
Do you ever say to yourself, am I better than, do you consider yourself?
Yeah, is he better than you were?
It bothers you when people talk about him as being the greatest player of all time.
Well, it bothers me because we all have our opinions, and I don't think that, commensurate with what he's doing, what he's done, and how the game is going today, that he's better than a number of people.
I contend Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player who ever lived. I would put you number 2, only because you only won 2 championships. Now, people are going to say, well, you know what, he had a lot of stats and this and that. You won 2 world championships, okay?
I have a friend of mine who I talk to about once a week. You know what he says about Michael's 4 championships? He doesn't say anything about it. Because he has 11.
Bill Russell.
I don't think, you can predicate how great a guy really is or because he has championships. There's a lot of guys on those championship teams who've done nothing.
The greatest scorer of all time? Not even. Would you even give him that?
Well, you see, what people don't remember was that my first 7 years, I scored a lot of points. Then I stopped scoring on my own volition. I tried to do other things. I was asked to do other things, and that's what I did. So if I had continued to score, I would probably be averaging 40 points for my whole lifetime. Does that make me the best scorer? I really don't know. But one thing I do know, that all the years while I was usually scoring all those points, I was leading the league in percentile shooting. And that's also important because if you take all the shots, then you should be making the highest percentage. So when they compare me with Michael's averaging 31 points for his lifetime. I average about 30 points for a lifetime. But I stopped scoring.
I know that basketball is a team game.
Right.
And you've already made Michael number 1. But if you had to have Wilt against Michael, my prime and his prime, how much money would you be willing to bet?
Wow.
He's 6'7" and he's like 197 pounds. Coming into what we call our domain, the pivot for us big guys, would not have been very wise of Michael, if he was playing during our time. So we would say, Michael, as long as you do all those fancy things outside of where we are, that's fine.
You think you could have beaten Michael in your prime? He would take you outside. He'd shoot from the 3-point arc. Then you try to come out and get him, he'd dribble around you.
I run 109.5,
100 meters, around 10.2 and then in that area.
52 vertical.
A 50-inch vertical jump. By the way, what's Michael Jordan's vertical jump? Do we know?
I don't think it's quite that high.
Not as high.
Bench press almost 600 pounds. Michael would probably be going.
Wait a minute, 600 pounds?
600 pounds.
You think he'd have been crushed, is what you're saying?
I don't think. I know you've been crushed. Right, yeah. So it wouldn't have been good for Michael.
I came into the NBA and destroyed it. My tools were so dominant that they frightened people.
You were Jordan before Jordan. Yes?
Yeah, well, I don't even like to say Jordan before Jordan because Jordan's come behind a whole lot of us as far as I'm concerned.
Wilt, who always has the last word in everything, Wilt looked down at Michael and
Michael, until you are so great that they start changing the game to stop your greatness, then I don't think you have a right to make that accolades in that particular way.
Here's what historians and some of Wilt's teammates have had to say about him.
What was it like to play alongside a guy who averaged, 50 points a game in a season? He averaged 50.4. I mean, every night you go out, you think like, how can we lose? This guy's going to get us 50.
When he would score, people say, well, all he wants to do is shoot. He doesn't pass. He doesn't do any of those things. And so what he would do is he would be a little bit concerned that maybe his team was from being upset. But the one thing that he found out early on, that his teammates were very, very happy that he was scoring the points. And it allowed us to maybe be in more ball games than not. It's just hard for people to fathom what we talk about when we say what he did. He did things that just defy description. I can remember plays that he made that when I would talk about them, people said, no, he couldn't have done that. And I'm telling you, it's something that I saw. He was just a great, great basketball player.
Do you know what the NBA rebound record is?
It's 55 rebounds by Wilt Chamberlain.
Do you know who the other center was that night?
It was Bill Russell.
His second year in the league, 55 rebounds. That to me is incredible because against Bill Russell, they were the two greatest rebounders in the history of the game. And Wilt averaged just under 23 rebounds a game. And one year he averaged 27.2 rebounds per game. And Russell, beat him in in those championships. But to go against Bill Russell, the great defender, and get 55 rebounds, so people say, well, he probably, they didn't have the big centers, they didn't have the good ones in those days. He wouldn't do that today. Yeah, he did it against Bill Russell.
I think probably Wilt dominated the game more than anyone else. And the reason I say that because Wilt could do it on both ends of the floor. Offensively, no one could guard it. And defensively, Wilt was going after every shot.
In regular season, in the regular game, but he could handle the ball. And by the fact that he led the league in assists later on, showed he could pass the basketball. So Wilt had all the tools of any player. He didn't display them all the time because he was asked to do other things.
I saw Wilt Chamberlain once go to half court and make 20 out of 25 free throws from half court.
Wilt had a great shot outside. He used to win games in horse. But you never saw it because he knew where his value was.
Michael Jordan scored 50 or more points 31 times in his career. Impressive. Wilt did it 45 times in one season.
It's about a giant, 7 feet, 1 inch tall, and as athletic as any man who ever walked the earth. You try guarding that on a basketball court sometime.
Jimmy Breslin wrote a famous article that was in the Saturday Evening Post.
There's always some amazing number attached to him. 100 points, 50 points a game, on a team winning 33 straight games. It's almost like you imagine him going home at night and thinking, what next? What would be a good number? And then he'd go out and do it.
He never fouled out of a professional basketball game in his entire career.
On the 55 rebound game, how about that? Against Bill Russell.
He played a game against the Detroit Pistons. He blocked 26 shots. It's not possible for any human being to do the kinds of things that he was able to do.
People sneered and say, all right, big guy, you got an advantage, all you do is score. He said, I'll lead the league in assists next year. How's that? Led the league in assists.
How the hell do you stay so strong all season? How do you avoid fouling out? How do you take a beating every night with guys pushing you, punching you, grabbing you, and come back the next night fresh as a daisy? How the hell do you do this, Wilt?
Just one game, 48 minutes a game is really enough, but playing a whole season, 48 minutes a game. I mean, when I look back in retrospect, I say, what were they doing to me? Jesus, it must have been some time when I could have gotten a rest.
I know you did a 4.4 and a 40-yard dash.
Yeah,
you were a
right.
sprinter.
Yeah.
I know Jim Brown has wanted to race you.
Jim is the most competitive man that I've ever met. And not only is he is competitive, he's very apt at doing most things better than most people. Jim, though, did find it very hard to believe that someone of my size could outrun him at what he was supposed to be very, very good at doing. And he would forever challenge me in races of 40-yard dashes. I'm gonna go out there and do it. I'd go out there and run Jim, beat him, and people would be watching me come back. It would be dark. He says, well, it was close. It was like a tie. I said, come on, Jim.
Could never admit it, huh?
No, he had a hard time. Even today, he has a hard time admitting it. Supposed to be quicker, because I think subconsciously I was trying to prove to people.
Lenny Wilkins cast off a shot that appeared to be 3 feet above the basket, and Wilt jumped up and caught this ball with one hand. The referee called goaltending, and I hollered at him, how could you call that goaltending? And he says, guy, what I just saw is not humanly possible.
He was so great that no matter what he did, people never accepted him as being enough.
If you win, everybody says, well, look at him, he's that big. If you lose, it's, how can he lose a guy that size?
What the Celtics had going has never been duplicated in professional sports. I mean, Wilt, he never had a chance.
To go up for a dunk, and someone would put their hand within the cylinder trying to block his shot, and Wilt would let up, because he knew he could break the man's arm.
He came to the
Magic, and Wilt says, all right, look, we're going to play a game till 12. Winner stays, and they'll...
Wilt Chamberlain, the most dominant player in NBA history, who could dominate a game on both ends of the floor, who's the most physically imposing player to ever play the game, who had all the tools and skills with a guy his size, who was asked to win games in the paint and do the other things, despite being a great handler and outside shooter, should be, with no doubt in anyone's mind, the greatest basketball player who ever lived.
He thought, and rightfully so, that he was the greatest basketball player ever lived.